Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the Reality of Change Orders Day 3. My name is Millie Broughton, Product Marketing Specialist on MEP. Before we get started today, I'd like to go over just a few housekeeping items. Please, if you have any questions today, this will be the day that we're going to answer as many questions as we possibly can towards the end of the webinar. So go ahead and drop those questions either in the question box or at the Google form link that is in the chat box as well. Questions that we don't have time to answer today, we'll either answer those individually or in a follow-up document that'll go out with the recordings next week. This webinar will be recorded and distributed in a follow-up email. Today, I'm joined again by Robin Reinhardt, the Electrical Sales Manager on the East Coast, who will be moderating the webinar series, and he is going to take it over.
Thank you, Millie. Welcome back, everybody. It's a pleasure being here once again with you. Today is going to be a little bit of review first, and then, of course, we'll be going through the product that supports a lot of this philosophy. My name is Robin Reinhardt. For anybody that's new, you can see there that I've been in the industry quite a spell, as well as with Trimble. That is my contact information. I handle the eastern side of North America. And if you're within that region, I'll be sharing a map at the end, as well as introducing it to my counterparts for you to reach out to if need. So this image again. So even though this might have been our thought or philosophy a little bit over the course up to this point, I'm hoping that over at least the last 2 days, we're starting to think about it a little differently in the change orders. Change orders are a little more scary than maybe we take in consideration on a day-to-day basis. Now, I don't know if it's that drastic, but I thought that was an awful fun image. So to recap, the real costs of change orders, we talked about contractors lose an awful lot of money on changes. Costs go beyond just the direct costs of changes. You must be very responsive on little and or large changes because of the impact or ripple effect that can have in your schedule. The solution is to standardize the change order process. So we've given you some tools. We talked about that. There'll be a toolkit included in the download that you'll be able to have access to this next week. So that's going to help us leverage this situation. We're going to be able to enable enables tongue-tied. Promotes the communication to drive efficiently in estimating, helps ensure fair profitability and project success of all participants, and helps us minimize negative impact on project schedule. The main reasons for a change order program. The reason that we spent the money to develop a standalone change order program is that the reality is the sales of that process is completely different than it is in estimating. Estimating is a cost plus approach. Change orders is, yes, we still need to get our costs so we can apply that to our accounting system and track our jobs correctly, but we also have to represent a cell, and we have to represent that cell well enough and detailed enough that we can explain it, support it, and then get the acceptance that we're needing. I bought my original estimating license with the company I was working with over 35 years ago. I waited several years before acquiring the change order program. Like you, I took my investment and I adapted it. If I had the hindsight of 2020, I think I would have actually flipped that investment around. I think I would have purchased the change order platform first and used it to cheat doing estimates prior to having the investment of both tools and putting it in the right team members' hands. Because quite frankly, the bird in the hand is worth more than two in the bush. Yes, we need to keep that estimating focus. We need to keep filling our funnel and having opportunities there, but not at the detriment of losing the one that we have in our hand and giving up so much revenue from that. Now, We have a couple different variations of this. We're going to mainly focus on the classic variation, which has built our reputation. It's also the variation that allows me to run independently of, if you will, laptop off the hood of my truck. But we'll mention the enterprise in the Anywhere platform. The Anywhere platform allows us to use a internet connection to get access to our solution, and does give us a lot more functionality. The change order programs allow us that quick response that we're looking for. It's going to help us log and manage the changes. These changes get away from us with all the other fires that we have to deal with as project managers on a day-to-day basis. One of the last thoughts we have is worrying about that price that we need to put together. So help us stay on focus on that. Help us also when we go into our contract meetings and manage that information with them as well. We're going to be able to draw from existing contracts for those that use the AccuBid estimating solutions today, but that's not a requirement. This tool can be put into place without any other of the Trimble solutions and be run standalone. You're going to see flexibility in the pricing. You're going to see flexibility in labor recovery methods. You're going to be able to see how you can customize that, save that within a project profile so that you don't even have to be in front of the solution yourself to know that you're going to represent the right value to a client. I'm going to be able to set up a default and be able to stand in the field, call the office, no matter who steps up to the software in that case. I can simply give them a bill of material knowing that when they go into that project and put that bill of material list together, it's going to calculate it based on the negotiation that we have established in our precedent with that particular project. This helps us assess the big picture. As you can see there, it can run standalone. You'll see these different icons as we go through. It is a comprehensive material database, has a very dynamic takeoff, intelligent breakdowns. These breakdowns is what's going to give us the control of augmenting our schedules and augmenting the right areas of our schedule so we can see the impacts very quickly prior to the change order leaving our hands and being priced. We can see a lot better the ripple effect by taking this elephant of a job and breaking it down into the small bites, the small focuses that we need to have if we're trying to consume it. You're going to see me filter the audit trail for those takeoffs to match the current takeoffs in my estimates and against my budgets. Now, a lot of these slides I'm about to put in here are mainly so that when you get this deck next week, you have some referencing of things that you're going to see in the demonstration. So we won't spend a lot of time on these. I'm going to bring them to your attention, but during the demonstration, you'll hear much more detail about the functionality. One is the schedule. The ability to manage the schedule, create and lock these change orders down, see how those change orders affect your baseline contract and create a contract to date down here in the lower right-hand corner as those changes become approved. Alarming the changes so that they stand out for your attention. You'll be able to filter this screen every week going into that job site meeting and say, show me all the changes that haven't yet been approved. Software will give me a solid list of those. Whatever's standing, I can go in there, make that another contact to the meeting minutes. Once again, keep pushing and help managing those decisions so we can reduce that ripple effect. You're going to see that you're going to be able to control how this information is displayed and what rights you're going to have in that. You're going to have that standardization within a project so the client sees the same information organized in the same manner and the pertinent information that that client has indicated to you that they need to make their decisions simple and easy and possibly without negotiation. Amount of detail, whether you want to start off with a simple narrative of a description and a quantity only and keep some of this information held back, or you want to expose this information, keep in mind you're always in control of what you're exposing because you're exposing a controlled sell value, not a cost plus value like you would if you were to expose information out of your estimating solutions. Labor as well. Structuring that labor, structuring the recoveries with the safety cleanup and guarantees, those elements, once again, that we have established as standards. And of course, opting to get signatures and making these independent contracts. A lot of times clients will take those and are able to collect on retainage and not have to have the retainage held all the way out because in a sense they're getting an individual signed confirmation contract. Not always the case, but it is sometimes the case. So now I'm going to share my desktop with you. We're going to go through this. As we do, we're going to talk about mainly the change order solution right here, the classic AccuBid Pro. Like I said, it's what we've built our reputation on. It runs standalone. It installs on a Microsoft PC, and it can be untethered from any other information because it can host all its own information. That information can be shared. The Anywhere platform is our cloud-based platform. It is on a different engine. It's going to do different things with spec-driven solutions and those type of things. If you saw our Anywhere presentation, I'm sure you saw that. In this, both solutions will come with a trade service pricing utility. That's part of the package, and that will maintain that database to keep us current. In the Classic, you have an option to add the graphical solution. That solution is actually embedded in the Anywhere platform. The Anywhere platform is a complete solution from estimating to change management to the graphical solution to the trade service SX link, as well as the trade service submittal manager. You pay a flat fee by year to access that solution. These others here on the bottom, the Classic AccuBid, is a purchase product that you would pay maintenance on to maintain. The Live Count is a cloud-based solution that ties into my Classic and allows me to host all my drawings. You're not charged for any of that hostage. You can load as much information as far as drawings go into the Live Count, but it does connect that directly to your changes. Now, we're going to go and spend mainly focus here, like I said, on the Classic platform. So I'm launching that. You can see here that I'm now looking at the different projects that I have access to. Each one of these project profiles can be independent of each other as far as information, structure, reports, all those type of things, so that once again, I do not have to come in here and remember, how did I do this change order last time to make sure I'm doing this one the same. Now I'm going to add a new project in here. I'm going to give this a project name. I'm going to assign it to a particular location, whether it's my local or my server or my network. I'm going to use a database, which you can have multiple databases, though I encourage you to have one, as well as I can upload the estimate if you're using the Classic estimating platform, so that you already have some of this information that I'm about to do manually would be already populated in here, and I would just need to make some modifications if needed or augment it if needed. So we'll go with this building 101 change management. So we're going to call our project. Now I'm going to be putting in my address for the project, contact name. This is so that any reports can pull from this data and populate it into any document that I generate. If that location has a separate site, then of course I'd fill that information out. Here I'm going to add my subcontractors that I have agreed to work with on this particular project and are in my budget already, because more than likely it's going to possibly influence them with other changes and already have their information as well as a way of adding their value to the changes. So we'll put Moleman Excavation. We'll put in here Fire Alarm Company. I like naming companies. Now I'm going to put in my quoted material. So I'm going to have maybe my fixture quotes coming from Gray Bar. I might have my gear quote coming from Wesco or whoever. I'm going to put those different identifiers in here to make my life easier a little bit later. Now I'm going to be putting in my base contract value. So I'm going to put in my gross value, and then I'm going to go through the breakdown of my summary and put in my man hours, my material dollars, my direct labor dollars, and my indirect labor, those things, that benchmarks that we want to measure against and see how those are going to change over the course of the acceptance of change orders, and watch my budget for billing as well as tracking. Next, my company information is already going to be there. This here is area where I can set up how I want to directly email this solution out of the product. So if I am in a change order and I say, you know, I've done this, now let me get it to them as quick as possible. I can click on the email, and the subject matter is going to say certain elements with inserts within them. These are field codes. These can grab data out of the file that I'm in and insert it into the narrative. So I'm not typing out, once again, what change order number this is or what project this is about. All that's being done for me. And same with a body. I can put a body of information in there so when they receive that email, and then there will be a link in that email. It turns all my documents into a PDF, so it stays a legal tender between my company and their company. It's not an editable file that's done in Windows or some of the other things that I see people do. Even just writing it in the email and putting that information in the email. Again, those type of things don't tend to stand in court because they are editable. If I need to have it CC to somebody else, maybe I need to have it CC to my upper management, I can, of course, add that narrative in here as well, making it an automatic function for me to simply click on the icon and off it goes, sending this narrative forward. Now that takes us into the project schedule. Now, in this project schedule, let me switch over to a job that has more value to it. Here's one I've been using for years. I've added so much to this. This job has just gotten ridiculous. But this illustrates kind of that management that I'm talking about. When I have put in a CCN, a cost change notice, I can have narratives on that, the descriptions of that. It's also going to keep a log of what's been pending, rejected, disputed, what's actively being disputed, what turned into a cost plus scenario, how many have been approved. I've got 43 approved. I've got one in submitted state. The change order to date means I've done $169,000. My base contract was $367. My total now is $536. And of course, the breakdown of that. Controlling when I received this and when I saved this file, showing to the client that, listen, I've only had these on the average of 1 day. I was very responsive in getting this information to you, but now let's take a look at how long it took you to approve it. It's taking on the average of 2 weeks. I'm going to start doing a measurement mile there. I'm going to start making sure that I narrate that because they're not going to come to me for liquidated damages at the end of this. In this, you'll see I can alarm them to draw them to my attention. That's just an internal focus. When they become change orders, I can see the date and the change order identifier that we're going to track them from. Once again, all this can be filtered and managed into different reports. If I scroll further to the right, a breakdown of those overhead, those labor man hours, the material dollars, the direct costs, all the way over to the amount of markup of overhead and profit in dollars, the start date of the actual change, the due date when we anticipate this change to be completed and off of our schedule. All those things are valuable information for my management. Now, let me just make a switch back over to our little project. Okay. If I need to, that filter can be something as simple as changing the screen style. In the case of going outside the office with a laptop, I don't want to open this in front of a client and expose that information. So I'll create different styles. You can control anything that is exposed or not exposed, and you can save different scenarios for your different environments. When I'm back inside my controlled environment, I want to see more information. I'll go back to my, in this case, default style, and I'll have the information structured the way I'd like to see it. Now we're going to add a CCN, change notice. I'm simply given a name. Now two things are happening. Live count here is launched because I'm using the live count solution. This is, once again, this little window on top would normally be dragged onto a second monitor so I can look at them simultaneously. Today I can't do that during our demonstration, so I'm just going to move it over here. And I'm going to upload some files. Now these files reside on my computer, but I can link to pretty much anywhere I can see through my PC. So Dropboxes, emails, anywhere those files are at, I do not have to save those locally first. So as those are being updated, let's go back to the estimating and talk about the different areas of focus. In the change management, there are going to be several different elements that I'm going to want to account for. Obviously, the date when I received this. If this is something I took a day to get to, I'm going to backdate that, the start of the activity, the due date of that activity being the change. Once again, that might be anticipated right now. Later, I'm going to comply with that and follow that up. If this is a directive from another source, I'm going to put that source in here, and I'm going to put whatever narrative or identifier they have on that directive. My status is right now pending. I don't need to alarm it. Now notice I have two different areas here for reporting. And this is a distinction we'll look at a little bit more detail in a little bit, but mainly what I'm telling you here is that this is generating two scenarios out of the one cost. It's generating that sales scenario that I want to provide to my clients, limiting certain information, focusing in on other information. Once again, we want to put our sales hat on when we're doing this. Where my office copy is going to be something that I'm going to standardize. It's something that I want to be able to share with my controller, my accountants, so that I can get my job cost budget set up correctly. Even though I might upsell material, I might upsell labor, we know right now that that's a lot of time not an upsell. That's just going to be taken later from us. So I'm going to ask software to break that apart in that report, put that money at the bottom line so that if we're managing the job, we're not out there overspending just because my material bucket got filled with an extra amount of dollars. Now I'm spending more than I maybe should be. The office copy cannot be emailed out of the system. It's protected, so I don't accidentally ever send it off to the client. We're also going to manage the data. So this is meant to host all the influencers, whether it's individual drawings, individual files, individual images that you might have taken out on the job site that help explain this. We want to upload that information. We can upload the entire folder, individual files, or we can even connect to web links. Here I'm opening up an image. This is off of the SysQ model, explaining what we're trying to do or the problem we're having with accessibility. This here is what I look like on the weekends. All right. I'm going to put a small description in here. This, once again, is mainly just out on my schedule. I can put some notes in here, once again, mainly on my schedule. Neither one of those values are normally shared outside of this control. But here on the notes, we definitely share information. This is where I'm getting some of that CYA. I'm putting in those rights that I want to make sure I cover. I'm looking at the days of this. And once again, at this stage, I haven't done any takeoff. So I have this defaulted this way to encourage a value, but I'm going to obviously make those adjustments. I might even play with the font colors or the fonts to make sure that they stand out and get the attention of my client. That's a field code where the software is going to automatically put in the CCN number header and the CCN number right behind it. You have about 80 field codes to work with, so there's a lot of ways of getting data in. Now we're going to be looking at the actual takeoff. So if you look at this, if you're not an Accubid user, what you're looking at here is you're looking at two sides of a screen. The right-hand side is going to become your takeoff. The organization of this takeoff here, like in under area, is giving me a way to dissect and manage that what we call a bid breakdown. Allows us to break the bid into focus areas. The left-hand side of the screen is going to be the database. That's where we're going to reside and pull information from. So right here, I've got two different buildings. Now, this is not something I have to type in every single time I do a change order. Once I've done this on the first one, or if I had uploaded my estimate, this had already been done here for me. But now I'm putting this information, I will save that so that changes in the future. This list is already here at my fingertips. Now, not just breaking it apart, but there are real reasons for us to do some kind of additional factoring. Now, just because we're using NECA labor units does not mean those labor units cover every scenario. And once again, that is our benchmark value. Beyond benchmark values, we need to adjust those labor units for the real world activity level. And here I'm going to pretend that building A is a new building on the project, building B is a renovated project that's going to be occupied by the employees of the client. There's fancy furniture, there's equipment, operating equipment, whatever, that's going to impede my performance. Right there, I put a 50% labor increase on any takeoff that I assign to building B. that adjustment can be made at any time. It could be an idea I have right now, but until I kind of do my takeoff, see the continuation of that, or if I'd brought over from my estimating, I would probably already had some of those decisions in place. Now that building area is still too large. I'm going to break this one down by floor, giving myself different focuses of getting that takeoff driven, but also getting that takeoff adjusted. Higher I go up in the building, material management as well as labor management, getting up and down to those floors, there's a cost to that. So I'm putting 1% per floor. Now, most of us have a standardized system list. That can be your system list with the narratives you like, that once again, defaulted. Not as often do we have a bid item, but this can be used creatively for breaking the specialty room off of a floor or any one of those additional granular breakouts that we have. Most important thing, and I think one of the things that AccuBid really does well in the industry, is that they've given this really structural tool that allows me to set conditions that would influence installation. That is, conditions will be able to individually adjust material objects within an assembly. So if I have an assembly that has raceway, wire, junction boxes, a lot of different elements within it, and I'm installing that at a different elevation, a lot of us will have to come up with some number in our head to adjust that labor. Here I can set up a standard for that elevation, and I can even set up a standard for the condition, where here I'm putting a 40% increase on the raceway, I'm putting a 40% increase on fastener hangers, 40% on junction boxes, and 40% on the wire pull, which in a typical branch situation is probably warranted, because I'm going to be up in the air for all those 4 activities in that assembly, as an example. And a feeder, on the other hand, yes, I would need that raceway up there at 40%, the fastener hangers 40%, junction box if I was to use any, but notice that the wire pulling is sitting here at 100%. I'm not adjusting it at all, because I'm standing at the panel on one elevation, I'm standing at the equipment or panel at the other side at the same elevation, or I am just simply using that chaseway as a pull-through. So I'm not up there terminating and making the joints like I would be in a branch wiring, where I'm doing small pushes or pulls and dealing with that additional labor need. Those conditions can be set. I can simply, as an estimator, now just describe in my breakdown what it is that I need to be doing. So if it's not standard, it's something that's not working off a 6-foot ladder or working from a standard elevation, then I'm going to tell the software that's the uniqueness, and I get that adjustment automatic. Now, where am I get this data? The drawings, by the way, they synced up. I didn't have to type those in, because when I upload those to live count, there's a bidirectional connection between the drawings and the estimate. So those are ready for me to simply manage from right here. So set up my area, set up my focus, decide what it is I'm going to take off, and what the factor of the area is. Now I'm going to go over to my database, and we're going to step back into the item database, which a lot of times is used more frequently in change orders than it is in estimating, because we're getting a bill of material from the field, and we're just dumping that bill of material in here. Simple to navigate. If I can read it, I can find it. Grab conduit, grab the type of conduit. I'm telling the software I actually want conduit, not this fittings. Now I'm simply selecting the size. I'm doing all this by simply double-clicking on my mouse. As I do that now, I'll show you the behind-the-scenes information. In here, you're seeing that narrative of the object. You're seeing the price that was last updated. You're seeing a nation average list price. That's the trade service price, as well as my cost price, which is something that is going to be maintained in the database. Showing me roughly I'm getting a 70% discount on that object when I buy it from my supplier. You have 2 additional material adjustments that are used a lot of times in change orders, where they wouldn't be used in estimating. And mainly this is for giving you 2 different what I would consider sell values out of there. Rather than taking a 70% discount off of that list price to get me down to my average net, in situations, government work, or situations where I have a client that's sensitive about certain items because he shops at Home Depot every weekend and he knows that this device only costs $1.50 and you're trying to charge them $3 for it, then I can go through there, that same database I'm maintaining for everywhere else, and I can go through and go, here, I want some custom adjustments on these certain items, so I'll adjust those devices down, but I might adjust up items that he's not that concerned with to get some of my buyback back. But the point here is that I can assign that to this project, so the software is using that unique adjustment throughout its pricing. Then, of course, we have labor units. So the labor units that are offered are 6 different labor units: AccuBid 1, 2, and 3. That first one is a very competitive labor unit, mainly for commercial, and then we have the NECO 1, 2, and 3 as well. And those I suggest that you do not adjust, as I mentioned yesterday. Keep those as a standardization that can be validated. Then we're going to sort and use sort codes. This is really coming out of what we talked about as far as scheduling went yesterday, the ability to break an activity into a schedule. So if you look at that sort code 7, I'm going to be using that sort code 7 in the takeoff at the end to be able to take this material item, this 3/4 inch conduit. If I've taken any of that off, it's going to put it in this bucket where I'm going to have my rough-in material being able to be separated from my wire pulling material. So that would be on a different code of sort code 7. So you have 8 different ways of regrouping this material for material buyouts, labor tracking, simple reporting, historical reporting, that type of thing as well. Now you can see you can put other information in here. You can put manufacturer representation, catalog number, supplier name, and those type of things. I don't know a lot of clients that do that right in their database, because we have a simple way of connecting your bill of material right to your vendors through trade service. So they typically do that on a project by project basis rather than doing it in the database. A common assembly is where we're going to live. Common assemblies are going to save us the time and effort. I'm simply drilling down to the assembly that what I'm wanting as far as material grouping goes, and I'm going to use this assembly list. Now these are static shopping lists. They're editable. I can edit down here in the lower left, delete, add elements. I can change the variable. But really what I just did is made a copy of my assembly on my database that's now in an editable form. Then I can make the adjustments that I see fit for the situation. In the end, this needs to truly represent not an average, but a need in a change order. So when you look at this first item, it's going to be influenced off the length. It's told that right here, and then it's going to give it a multiplication of 1, a division of 1, or give me 1 foot for every foot that I measure. Couplings, once again, looking at the length, give me 1 coupling. How often? Every 10 feet. The connector, on the other hand, is going to look at the count value. So if I say that this takeoff has a certain number of segments, then each segment is going to need 2 connectors. So multiply by 2 for every 1 count. So we'll put 200 foot in here. We'll break that down into 5 different segments, and you can see how the material has been adapted based on that simple math. Now I have a value, I have man hours, I even have an average length right there at the top of the column, giving me an average distance between boxes that I can use as a kind of a gut check. Any one of those items I can adjust. I can put a label adjustment on here, identifying this as circuit 11, which might be helpful for my client to see and understand what we did here for each one of the maybe circuits that were required. I can put notes on here as to why this is needed. All that information is, once again, helping me bolster the communication, not just to my internal team, but externally as well. Commit that to my takeoff. We'll change our view here so we can see that, and you can now see that information. So that's added the material value, it's added man hours to the takeoff. Now I can manually key things in, and like I said, a lot of times we're going to do that in the situations of verbal communication where we don't have a set of drawings that have been provided for us. When we have a set of drawings, we're going to do that. Now here I'm going to go to some receptacles. I'm going to got some feeders in here. Like I said, these assemblies in this database is for your adjustment. We're going to do a little takeoff using live count. I'm going to drill down to the assembly. I've told the software to automatically launch live count so that I can come down here, bring live count forward. It's going to tell me, Robin, I've got to set a scale before I can allow you to do any measurement. You haven't told me any scale values yet. So that alarm, it's just this, that alarm's sitting right here in my face, letting me know what I need to be doing. So I'm going to go over to the drawing setup, and I'm going to set the scale. Now, as I zoom in and out here, it's going to allow me to do a link takeoff. Now here I'm clicking where I need to put those counts. I'm just clicking with my left mouse. Here I'm holding down the shift key while I click with my left mouse button, indicating the software I don't want to put another count, but I want to change the direction or pin that bend right there. I'm going to put a junction box. I'm going to put a bend. And now before I put the bend on top of the panel, I'm going to hit the space bar, which gives me this adder that's about to happen. So when I click, I get that additional 5-foot drop that I need to get down from the ceiling space down. Now I'm holding down the G key. So there's 3 keys on my keyboard I need to understand and 1 mouse button to do all this activity that we're doing right here. So this is a very simple tool to learn and get under belt. Matter of fact, I'd say after the first drawing, you know 90% of what you need to know to manipulate and get this information. Now I'm going to end that run, telling the software I'm done with that particular measurement that's needed, warranted, and that's a direct connection right into my estimate. Now that's a live connection and it stays live. If I come back as a project manager, superintendent, looking at this drawing file from the field and saying, listen, I can't run the way you did, I've got to run it this other method. And a lot of times that's really what a change order is going to be. It's going to be taking the original estimate that we've done and manipulating it. Like I said, the advantage of having the S-main solution, that's also the same as the change management solution. If it wasn't, then I still can manipulate that information after the fact. If I delete this line item out of my estimate, then my drawing that supports that is also going to remove those marks because, like I said, this is a bidirectional connection between the drawing and the estimate. So now I have a drawing that I'm going to be able to present in PDF. It's going to be attached to every one of my change orders that warranted measurement off the drawings. Even if it wasn't, I tended to put those in there so that I have that tool at my use for the client acceptance. Now we're just going to counter view objects. I've changed my system. I'm going to select my device, and I'm going to simply mark those manually on the drawing. Now, this isn't any different than using a pen, paper, and marking or clicking method. I'm just doing it electronically. I'm doing it, and it's directly connected to my estimate. Value and source. So the source showing me where that's coming from. Now, I made a mistake. I've put this in the wrong location, and we're going to do this. It wasn't at 30 foot like my raceway was, so I need to modify that. I'm going to come down to the change breakdown, and I'm going to simply tell the software what it is I want to change my mind about, and the software will move that information, augmenting this 19.78 man hours that it was a moment ago back to what it should be at 14.7. Giving myself the right value in the estimate due to the condition. Now, fixtures, distribution, these are designations, feeder takeoffs. These are modulars that allow me to take things off quickly when they're not a standard or common assembly. In this case, we'll quickly create a type A fixture. Don't need any lamps, even though that would be a helpful hot list in case I did need them. I do need some other fixture whips and elements to that. I'm adding this. I'm making this custom assembly that's pertinent to this project. Now, once again, if I'd done it in the estimate, that list would be sitting here for me. That's not something I'd be recreating on this first change. Put it under my lighting system and get ready to go quantify. Now I'm going to quantify a couple manually, and then we're also going to let the software auto count things. So if you have a situation where you have a complete new layout of the drawing on a change order, this is a tool that would benefit the speed of takeoff as well as the accuracy a lot of times, in that it's going to find those objects for me. So here we're going to deal with these 8. I'm going to come over here and train this filter. This filter becomes important as well to tell my story. Here I've got 3 different elements that we've taken off this one drawing. I want to focus in on just one. Imagine me being able to do that with a PDF and attach the drawing that affects the fire alarm system. So I'm going to add to my fire alarm team. Drawing that handles the lighting and hand it to my lighting team. Once again, just increasing my communication and giving my team members focus on that takeoff. Now, auto count, we'll just quickly show this example of grabbing a fixture, asking the software to look for different rotations of that fixture, setting the confidence level due to the drawing clarity, and off the software just does the count. So auto count's launched. It's running around that drawing. It's now looking for that object. It's learning as well once it's found this object. You notice that it popped up 155, but it noticed I'd already counted 8, so there's 147 left for us to deal with. To review that on the drawing, you can see those 8 that I'd already counted are separately identified. The rest are confirmed that I need those in my estimate. If I zoom in here, you'll notice there's a mixed bag of A's and B's. So the software needs additional information to be able to isolate those from one another. So we'll do this. And this function I'm doing, once again, one time. Once I've done this, the software then retains that information, and I can literally come down and repeat the action by sending the software off and saying, here, if there's other drawings with these objects, go find them, isolate them, get the quantities ready for me to insert into my estimate. I literally go to lunch and the software's still quantifying for me. That's the case. So as those results come in, just to confirm that, we can see those. All right. Now, in that review, close this out. The last thing I want to show you here, and once again, a very helpful tool for the project management, and that is a drawing compare, where I've got my original drawing that has the certain needs on it. I've received a new drawing, a revision. I'm going to ask the software to make the comparison, and it's going to overlay those drawings, changing the original pixels on the drawing that was there blue, the pixels on the new drawing red. The red is something that I'm sorry, the reverse of that. Red is dead, blue is new. So red was the original, blue is the new. I can see those differences. I can rotate these things when I need to. I can save that rotation, and then it brings up the next functionality for me, or I can cancel out and be done with it. Here I'm now aligning it. If I need to shift things a little, pixel left, pixel right to get it to line up so that I can make sure I'm seeing everything correctly. Once I've done that, it saves that information. It makes a merged model of that information so I can come back and look at this. And like I said, another great way of carrying that information forward and showing the client the differences and what you had to do from the original estimate to the change. All right. Now we're going to do quickly a summary carry through. I've got an estimate. I've done that takeoff. We're just going to jump ahead here a little bit, like I said, because we're running out of time, but you can see what we were talking about in the last 2 days of the journeyman rate. The journeyman is the 100% crew because those labor rates are based on that. I've got a full rate here. I've got a cell rate that I've adjusted. That cell rate is something that I've calculated. Now that calculation is available in the solution here. I got my foreman, I got my project managers, I got my safety, my cleanup, my guarantee, all additive man hours to the project that are consumed because we're adding more either men or duration or hours to the project. Please don't ignore those type of things. And like I said, if you're ever available to take our 8-hour seminar, we kind of break those things down and give you means of how to calculate those things so they're not just numbers pulled out of your ear. Here's my labor rate breakdown, putting all the different elements in there. If there's something that you need to add to that, for this case, safety cleaning, if I don't want to charge it up there as an individual line item, I still need to get the cost recovery of that, I'll build it into my labor. So you have different ways of getting those values. Just do not ignore the request of getting those values into your estimate. Okay. I'm just making the adjustments here real quick so they'll show up in our report well. Fill that information down. Now, if you look through ripple effect, you look through morale and attitude, you look at joint occupancy, the TIG factor, These are all elements that we've talked about this week. These are all real values. Now, maybe not on this first value because we haven't had the impact of having multiple changes. We haven't had to influence our crew members that well. But if there is, this is here to encourage the recovery of that cost. And normally once I've got that, I move forward with that as my template as well and start trying to do my estimating time, my as-built drawing time. Is that overhead? No, we've already determined that's not. That's job cost. Additional job cost elements, of course, my rates for that, my sell rate being separate from my cost rate. Negotiation costs, I mentioned yesterday, if I had some of that on the project, even though my costs might be the same, I'm going to sell that value much higher because of the loss of opportunity that I'm incurring by being captive during that negotiation. All right. Just things to think about, folks. My general expenses. Those can be linked to the calendar event on that where I started the start date on the change order and I hit the end date. That can use that field over here and automatically populate some of those values for me. I can alarm those so I don't forget to get those values in, or of course I can just simply key in the value that I want and make sure I have that value into my estimate. I think we're getting pretty close on time here. I got 11:50. If you wouldn't mind commenting in the questionnaire, letting Millie know if it's okay if we continue a little bit beyond our time here today, or if you would like us to make sure we have a stop date at, or stop time at 12 noon. Here I'm talking a little bit about the rental equipment. This is that important feature that I tell you that should be on every contract signing, your internal element of equipment, add those to the project. Obviously, I can still have rental equipment, add the tax value to it over there when it's something outside of my investment. But as long as that is, and it's in that book, all I'm really doing here is applying the values that are needed. My subcontractors, we already identified those identifiers. So I'm simply selecting those, putting their costs in. If I haven't had this subcontract before, I can bring up my vendor list here. I can go out, solicit pricing, get that pricing, bring it in, show the client that I did solicit multiple prices because this wasn't an occurrence that we had already committed to with this particular contract. Make adjustments to that if I want to. I want to put unique overhead cost recoveries on that, tax on that. Those are the type of things that I'm controlling right here within that breakdown. And these things can either be lumped to the client in the report or they can be broken apart. So that if we want to show the client, listen, we're looking with 10 and 10, 10 and 5, I don't have to do that cost recovery here. I can do it on the end. There is a unit price tab, even though this is taboo to use, in my opinion, but that is just mine. If you do sign contracts where you haven't agreed upon unit value, you can establish that unit value and simply add those costs to the contract. Here I've got my quotable materials. Millie, was there a synopsis on the response on that?
Okay is going, keep going.
Okay. Overhead and markup, this is gonna put my tail of the value on there, but of course, if you wanna go through and do some itemized recoveries, the more that we can itemize the recoveries, the more we can negotiate that, the better off, quite frankly, we are. One of the questions that was presented already was how to use a credit and an add within the same change notice. Normally, I would tell you to create two different ones. Have them out on your log because you can always merge those together after the fact. But if you want to have those represented on the same one, we can do that here by putting our credit value right there in the list or up above ahead of overhead and markup, depending on what your recovery needs are. So it could be that I'm recovering the credit based on the value I had in my estimate with the markups on there. If I put it up above in those dollars, I'm crediting it back only at the limited markups that I'm providing to the client or the client's requiring of me. But you would put that in as lump sum. As far as backing that information up and providing backup, they're not privy to those risk units that you have in your estimate, but I can go to my estimating solution, make the documentation of the material quantity, narrative of the material, narrative of my labor, and then make that an attachment. Remember, all the way back in the job information, I can attach any file I want to that. So that is one attachment I would attach, so that it's always associated with this summary, if I didn't do those independently of each other. Here, if you're an active user, you can launch right into your estimating and grab that file right there. Graphing information is really just a way of telling the pictures, but it's surprising how often that picture helps you communicate to your client of where these elements of cost, elements of risk are on a particular project, showing what we can do to mint some of this cost, work with the client, start giving the client some concessions on stuff, maybe even offering some other creative value engineering to help them pay for these conditions that are out of both of our hands, our control. It does help us in that communication. Now the report. The report is probably the key element of the solution being different from estimating. And the estimating, once again, we're generating a report that just has a cell of a cost plus value. Here I need to control this. So if you notice, I can put, oops. Oh, is that going to mess me up? It is. I apologize. That is, no, I'm not going to be able to do that. Well, I was going to show you the detail, but I think what I'll do is I'll explain it here back with that image that we looked at a moment ago. This amount of detail that we were looking at in the documentation, that's where I would set up that control. I'd make the adjustments that I want. I can use simple screen styles and insert into those reports so that this information is customized right to this client's needs. Clients are sensitive about certain things. We need to make sure those are always addressed. If they're not sensitive, maybe we don't need to have as much information in their lap and their hands for them to scrutinize. There's a delicate balance on that communication. You need to listen to the client. You need to let the client speak to you as to what they need rather than always just assuming that they need all this data. So balance that information. Now, like I said, this is available in the enterprise platform as well. It looks a little different in the enterprise platform in that we've given the enterprise platform, or especially the Anywhere platform, is a multi-user platform. So I could have different levels of participation happening simultaneously. I could have field personnel coming in here and quickly recording a request for pricing. Even though they're not responsible to do that pricing, they're simply logging it, putting that bell up there to ring it so that I can step in as the manager on the project and then deal with that. I can then put that into a PCO. So it's managing it rather than just on one schedule. It's giving me the opportunity to manage that at different phases. And it's also so that I can control access. If I don't need my superintendents looking at that PCO so they're not accidentally opening things up and exposing things to the outside world, then that's what we're going to do. This solution is all inclusive. I mentioned before, project, estimating, and management. So everything's hosted in one place. It's not standalone like the classic platform is by design. Here I'm going to have what is going to look very similar to. It's that schedule that we saw in the classic platform. And then, of course, I have the ability to put the change orders in a separate bucket, if you will. So if you're interested in not hearing a very quick, almost auctioneered demo that we went through today, you can surely reach out to us. Here's the contact for your regions. Chris Ryder handles the West. Audrey Salmon handles the Central, and I handle the East. Even though these two are much younger than myself, between them, they still have over 20 years of experience. I can promise you they can get the answers that you need to understand your investment. The MEP portfolio, you can see where this is just one element of what Trimble's doing to tie a solution and a game plan of operation, making a complete circle of this communication from the plan, concept, design, the bid award or the original estimate, fabricate and construction, operate and manage. So we fall right in that fabricate construction with the change management solution, all the way out to optimizing and utility building maintenance, that kind of stuff for your clients. These are upcoming webinars that we have, or a link to our upcoming webinars, please, if you found this useful in information, or during your comments that you can leave with us, let us know what else that you would like to see. We've already got some people asking us in yesterday's questions for seminar on the measured mile concept and how to back that information, how to best track that. We've already kind of started talking about that, so maybe you'll see that here in the future. But you have a resource here in Trimble, and this resource isn't just a modular resource. We are connected within the market space in a lot of different levels. I haven't been a formal project manager for 24 years. But I've been in and out of different clients' situations. I've helped clients through different situations. I've seen a lot and been exposed even more than I might have been staying in the trade under one company and growing up through that company. So you have this very rich, diverse resource. Please use that resource. Do we want to address any questions right now, Millie, or should we just address all that in the form next week? Any questions that are time sensitive that should be addressed today?
Is there a Trimble training program or certification for using Trimble to handle change orders?
There currently is not. Like I said, I keep mentioning this 8-hour seminar. It's not something that we have registered in every state, because that's actually quite a task to do. We've had clients take the receipts of that and within their organization's local municipalities get that information available to them as far as certification goes. But we do offer those, and we're going to see an increase in those as well here. The best chance for you to get that seminar is to probably go through some of your associations and have your association sponsor that for us to come in and give those seminars. We've done them mainly physically in the past, but obviously in this new world, it'll probably be more of this electronic means.
And then can you provide information on how to access the constructible site that you mentioned?
I think that's on your next slide, is it not? No, it's not here. We will. There is already a slide in the slide deck. If you've been a part of the last 2 days, it would showed you that Trimble constructible address. But we'll make sure that that's on there in the documentation. Listen, I appreciate y'all's attention. I appreciate you letting me kind of showboat a little bit here today with the product. You can tell I'm obviously proud of that product. It is, like I said, the product I think I would have bought first if I had the bigger picture of things then that I do now. It is a no-brainer, in my opinion. If we buy a different type of vehicle for our sales team, give them a car, we give them something like that. We buy trucks for our project management team. We buy special tools, computers for the office. We buy hand tools for the field. This isn't any different. This is a specific tool built for that team to manage a specific risk of your business. So put the right tool in front of the right team member. I appreciate your time. Millie, is there anything else that you wanted to address?
So the link to Constructible has been put in the chat box as well as sent as a question response to you all. As a reminder, this webinar and the entire series is recorded and it will be distributed next week via email along with an FAQ answering any questions that were already submitted and any questions that you would like to submit as well. The link is also in the chat box for that Google form to submit those questions if there's anything else that we can answer for you guys. So thank you for attending, and we will see you guys on the next webinar.
Thank you.